Greetings and welcome. I am Joffrey, and this is my first deep dive on Realms in Exile for CK3. Today, focusing on Near Harad and the lore that the dev team has come up with for this region mostly untouched in Tolkien's writings. While Realms in Exile first began with a tiny map, only covering the lands of the familiar conflict between the Rohirrim and Saruman, while the peoples of Enedwaith and the Leofrings of the Anduin spectated from the sides, the mod expanded vastly with its first major update, tackling the major conflict between Gondor and the cities of the White Tree and Mordor, with its Dark Lord concealed in his tower. Evil Tower of Ultimate Darkness number 3, if I'm counting correctly. And that's without Isengard included. I'll be damned if Tolkien didn't have a thing for dark towers of unspeakable evil. This next large update included a small portion of Harad. This portion of Haradwaith is known as Near Harad and is home to many realms of men from the serpent throne of Haruzan and its tentative allies among the havens of Umbar, to the Donan clansmen who desperately cling to their independence, remaining in isolation among the hills. The Haruz people were once a vast dominion, ruling all of Near Harad, and nearly uniting all of Haradwaith in the distant past. However, their decadence and idleness has brought them to the brink of destruction. Their tributaries gone, their vassals fading away with the years, all that remains of their once mighty empire is the ethnically Haruz people at the core of their realm. Haruzan. Now the closest kin, their Chelkari and Pezersani brothers, have become worthy rivals, powers in their own right to combat their former overlords. The people of Chelkar even reviving the faith of Nadimanya, the Wind Lord, to further push back against their former overlords and their worship of Sauron, or Khazgramaz, the Black Serpent as they know him. Perhaps Chelkar's faith in the Eagles of Manwë will give them the strength to free Harad from its continued domination by Sauron. However, the new king of Haruzan, Suladan the Serpent Lord, is an ambitious and capable lord with the dream of a reunited Harad, one nation under the Black Serpent's most loyal subjects, Haruzan. The Umbarians watch this struggle with apathy, not caring what backward savages spend their time doing, for they have other concerns far greater than what their future subjects do in their barren lands. Having returned to Umbar after the destruction of their house, the Casimirioni dynasty is hubris personified, tracing their ancestry to the ancient Castamir the Usurper, a lord of Gondor thrown out of his own land and exiled to Umbar by his own people. Admittedly, the Casimirioni are barely even considered part of his house, for what they don't like to share too freely is that when Gondor chased the usurper to Umbar, they murdered the entire dynasty as they chased him there. The current lords of the Haven being the descendants of Castamir's daughter through a bastard she had with a Haruz man. They follow the King's Men faith, less of a faith, and much more of a political ideology, for they recognize no gods but man. The actual tenets of this faith leaning suspiciously close to the actual religion of the corsairs who dominated the Haven in the absence of their so-called heirs of Castamir, implying that these lords are completely unaware of their own hypocrisy in believing themselves the rightful rulers of Gondor for their purity of blood, so lost in their arrogance that they fail to see how their own ideology is just as influenced by the corsairs and Haruz people as their bloodline is through their ancestry. Will these jumped-up corsairs reclaim their ancestors' place on the throne of Gondor, or merely sit in idle decadence, further decaying from their glorious past? There are those who see them for what they are. The Ar Adunaim, a ragtag assortment of members of Umbar's blood-purist faction who were exiled for their outspoken hatred for the supposed heirs of Castamir and their mixed-blood allies, practicing an ideology clearly warped by the savage corsairs they see themselves so far above. The Ar Adunaim are not merely Umbarians of mixed blood. They are true Black Numenoreans, incestuous to the core, and claiming descent from the great Ar-Pharazôn the Golden of Numenor. The man who broke the ban of the Valar, sailing west into the Undying Lands, seeking the secret of immortality that the gods and elves clearly were hiding from humanity. In truth, of course, the Forbidden Lands of Valinor were not forbidden to keep some secret. Rather, the Undying Lands are, and were, nearly unchanging lands of eternity for an undying race. Just as Middle-earth was made for men, and dwarves fit in there well enough, elves in Middle-earth always long for the sea, to go to that land that was meant for them. A land that would not make them weary as the constant changing lands of the East in Middle-earth do. The Valar told these things and warned the Numenoreans, many times of course. However, Sauron had utterly convinced them of the Valar's treachery. After Numenor was destroyed by the Valar and Pharazôn and his men trapped in eternal suffering until the end of the world on the shores of these undying lands. The Pharazonian dynasty that rules the Black Numenoreans of the Ar-Adanaim claim that there were members of his dynasty that had previously left the glorious island of Numenor, that had settled in Umbar before the fall. Unlike the Casimiri, however, whose ancestry to Castamir is proven, however weak it is, there is absolutely no evidence that can trace the past of the Pharazonian dynasty. Records only go back so far as the current Lord Gimmelkad's father. Many claim that the family has purposefully erased their records to keep this information vague. However, the Pharazonian, of course, retort, claiming that others must attempt to discredit them. The reality of their ancestry is up to interpretation, yet their practices and faith clearly show that they take tradition seriously. Rivaled only by the Swan Knights and Haven Guard of Dol Amroth, guards of the Citadel of Gondor, and the most elite knights of the Caradun in the far south, in their discipline and strength among men. The Abrazanim regiments of the Ardenaim hold fast to the traditions of old Numenor like no other, while the foolish Swan Knights and the Caradun ride their well-bred and noble steeds into battle. The Abrazanim maintain an unmounted combat approach, where each man among these regiments, of course, has a noble steed of their own and will ride them on campaign and at home. They would almost never consider riding them into battle, for horses are too pure and noble of creatures to waste in battle. Something that their northern and southern kin seem to have forgotten in their degradation from the glorious past. Traveling further east, we arrive at the steppes of Khand, a land of war, horses, and men of a new sort that we have not met before. Not tall, but broad and grim, bearded like dwarves and wielding axes of great size. Well, the devs have already confirmed that there's going to be no half-dwarves, so I guess we have to throw away the one piece of information we actually have about Khand from the books. It's a joke, Matt and Victor. I apologize. I love both of your work very much, and I have the utmost respect for you. All I really care about is that we're able to walk up and down the interior of the Misty Mountains, Hathaiglir, whichever you call it. That way I can slap a big coat of paint over it that says Durin's Folk, or Irby de Gobbers, or maybe even Angmarim. While Khand itself is not truly present, currently it's entirely off-map, one of its kings leads the vanguard into the south, continuing the long tradition of their people to migrate across Harad, stopping along the way just long enough to pick on the peoples of Lurmsakar while the pacifistic Sayakin and Erisor watch and lecture them both on the merits of peace. While the Sayakin in their mountain monasteries of self-reflection and the Erisor in their sacred rivers, the poor Lurmsakar, on the other hand, have no room for pacifism with the constant stream of nomads on their border. These poor folks have developed a religion worshipping death due to how readily it comes for them. creating generational coping mechanisms that doomed the people of Lermsakar to forever be bottoms that bend over to the Khandish raiders. The previous round of nomadic Variags eventually became the Tejin, near the coasts of Umbar and Marjurak. These peoples have traveled long and fought hard to reach the sea. Now, having an existential crisis, the royal family, having ruled the Confederacy, is on the precipice of succession. Kataj Eyal is on his deathbed, while his son and heir, Bor, gallivants around the southern realm of Falaya, where he has learned new ways of being. He has gained conviction that will likely doom his people upon his ascension to the throne. While Eyal has been good friends for his whole life with the most powerful lord of the realm, Lord Gyrushil II, they will both soon be in the ground, and Gyrushil's son, Azuman, is an irritable, zealous man, staunch in the traditions that made their people so great across their history. Bor and Azuman seem to be destined for battle. A civil war that shall rock the Tejin people to their core, and forever shatter the trust and brotherhood between the coastal Saurians, who have adopted many ways from their Falayan neighbors, and the traditional Maladumite nomads of the interior. This war will surely be looked upon with greedy eyes by neighboring realms, the sneering Umbarim supporting the nomads, while the Falayans support the Saurians, each seeking to plunge the Tejin peoples into a new war against their rival powers as soon as they finish killing each other. The corsair havens of Marjurak, however, seek not to support one side or another, rather to do as their kind always have, exploit opportunity. Typically, the havens are weak and disunited, having been torn between the realms of Umbar and Belikar at each realm's heights before the Tejin arrived and wedged themselves between the former powerhouses. Now the people of Marjurak have been reduced to a garbled mess of cultures, from Umbarim to Falayans to the recent Tejin invaders, united in their corsair faith in the gods and monsters of the deeps and their love of plunder. Aside from this, however, the coast of Marjurak is split among 3 infighting corsair factions, with the descendants of the ancient princedom of Marjurak, the Arzagari, practicing their king's men ideology among the mountains and vales of the interior, allied to the uncaring lords of Umbar. If Marjurak is to have any hope of continuing its piratical ways, whether that be for faith in the sea or in the strength of man, one of these realms must unite the rest and face down the Tejin hordes, while they bicker amongst themselves. And with that, we come to the end of today's deep dive. Feel free to stop by my stream anytime you wish to chat about the mod I'm playing, CK3 in general, or really any topic if I'm being honest. With that, I thank you for watching, hope to see you next time.